This debate is being produced by CNN and is coming to you live on CNN, CNN International, CNN.com, CNN Max, and CNN Espanol. This is a pivotal moment between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump in their rematch for the nation's
There we go. I take that volume down a little bit.
Each will make his case to the American people with just over 4 months until Election Day. Good evening, I'm Dana Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's...
Hey, look at that, I'm live. It's happening.
Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate a debate between the two candidates tonight.
Let's see how the camera does. Start virtual.
The rules of the debate with the audience at home. Former President Trump will be on the left side of the screen. President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determined their positions.
Hey, look at that.
Will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on and his opponent's
Everything's
microphone
working.
will be turned off.
It's a small miracle.
If the candidate interrupts when his microphone is muted, he will be difficult to understand.
It is a small miracle. But everything is working. It's amazing.
Each candidate will get 2 minutes for closing statements.
Now, a friend of mine told me this was going to be illegal, that I could not live stream and do this, that this would be a violation of CNN's copyright. So if I'm infringing upon their copyrights, well, God bless America. Here comes freedom. Here he comes, Joe Biden. Jumping Joe Biden. He looks healthy. I like it. Look at him go. He's got the little stutter step going. I think everything's going to be fine. He's going to be great. It'll be amazing. Bigly. All right, let's get some sound going here. Let's see what they're saying.
Donald Trump.
All right. So far, I'm putting Trump in the lead because he's got the broad strides. He walks like a guy who knows how to walk.
Let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%.
Right in there.
What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president, what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out
15,000
position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, but there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. That we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over.
Nothing says we're going to increase the supply like price controls and capping rents.
In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is amazing, to $15 for a insulin, which is $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year.
They're not capping the price. They're capping your out-of-pocket expense. The taxpayers are picking up the difference. Just bear that in mind.
And that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, the bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world, he's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where
Biden been smoking or drinking or something.
He rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant.
They're always using, I'm not a Trump guy, but they're always using the COVID statistics in order to justify attacking Trump's economy.
A position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money.
I miss Trump saying China.
And give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest rate in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. Now, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months, and then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump.
Uh-oh. Running into some interweb issues here. Sorry, folks. Whoa, lost it.
New debt. Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%. Plus
they never talk about revenues.
We took in more revenue.
They never, here you go.
And companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration. Even though we had largely fixed it, more people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weapons.
I'm gonna have to dial down responding to comments because it seems like every time I do that, it kills my CNN feed.
All of the things he's done, we've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they've raised $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period.
This is a tax on wealth, not on income.
It will help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President
Wow.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court.
I'm saying this right now. It already feels like Joe Biden is not going to be able to maintain it throughout the course of this debate. I feel like we've already seen him stutter off and not be able to maintain his train of thought. Like, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not voting for either of these clowns. I'm just saying that didn't look good.
Federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, and getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which, frankly, they didn't. But they would have. Everybody wanted brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it.
I think that the abortion issue is a loser for Republicans, like the border is a loser for Democrats.
States. I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
Well, he can't restore Roe v. Wade because he's not on the Supreme Court. That's a Supreme Court decision.
And even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period, period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative.
I've heard this a
Is he
lot,
gonna
but
sign that bill?
Trump's
I'll be
specifically
for it.
come out and said he's not going to sign a universal ban.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security.
And we're not going to let him
Biden,
answer.
A record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where 40%.
Neither of these candidates are proposing any kind of fundamental change to the way the immigration system works, which is the number one problem we have with immigration.
Total ban.
That's my big problem.
The total initiative relative to what we can do with more border patrol and more.
Current immigration policy incentivizes illegal immigration, period.
At the end of that sentence, I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in
Thank you,
caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, and his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person come in and his administration, killed three American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed three people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the two greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these three incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places.
Mass deportation is a scary thing. We have to think about the expansion of police powers when we talk about mass deportation.
At all, and he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved. Choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie.
Just all of it.
For
Just
example,
wholesale.
veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up.
From a pure Occam's razor perspective, I would say it's pretty hard to believe he would say that in that moment.
It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
The 4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family.
I'm just going to say it. I want to see the guys fight. Just throw down, for God's sake.
Veterans when they come home and their families, and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right. Thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its 3rd year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable?
I'm just going to throw it out there. Ukraine should not be part of NATO.
Our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand
Move on, man. Answer the next question.
Chief, if that's what you call him.
The problem with Trump is he's captain last word. He's got to get the last word. So he's burning up his time right now.
Me more than just about any of them.
The biggest, they like me the most. Just move on. Answer the question.
As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people.
I don't like Trump. I genuinely believe that.
Much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned, and so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never.
If I got to give it to Trump,
like
I got to give it to Trump on this one. I don't think there's a war in the Ukraine if Trump had gotten reelected. I don't think that war's happening.
Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number 2, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number 3, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never
come back
said
to you
that.
for 1 minute. I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
Acceptable. No, they're not acceptable.
Interesting.
But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th.
I'm telling you, I don't like a lot of Trump stuff about Trump, but I think the Ukraine war is over pretty quick if he gets reelected. I genuinely believe that.
Before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear.
It's a war.
He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then do you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus?
All right, so that's fear-mongering. Do you really think Putin wants a full-out war with NATO?
Find out what he's going to do.
Is that something that's believable?
If in fact he does what he says and walks away.
Is that genuinely believable? I'm asking the audience here, is it genuinely believable that Putin wants a full-out conflict with NATO? I think that's fear-mongering. I'm sorry. I don't buy it. This isn't the 1930s.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages.
This is a tough topic for Biden.
And thought to still be alive are 5 Americans.
He's got to walk a pretty tight line here with the anti-Jew, the anti-Semite, and these college protests. He's got a tough line to walk here.
To resolve this conflict. But so far, Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward, which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime,
it's kind of a big deal, isn't it?
In Israel, we're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so they're two different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
And
just going back to
that's
Ukraine
it.
for 1 second.
And back to Ukraine.
Ocean separating
he
us.
can't move
European
on to the next
nations
topic.
together
He just can't move on to the next
have
topic.
spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most
NATO
incredible
needs to
job
carry
I've
their
ever
water.
seen.
Sorry, this is the thing I support Trump on. NATO's got to carry their own water.
100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money.
The President of the United States should hold NATO accountable. I believe it.
More spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute?
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. You're going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength.
Can I just say that
as well?
More people support leaving NATO than I think the Democrats think.
Europe, a major war in Europe. What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland.
The question is whether or not Putin wants to risk that broader war. I don't believe he does. I don't think a lot of Americans believe he does.
Nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question. Would you guard us against Russia? At a very secret meeting of the 28
a lot of people agree with Trump on this, even Democrats. Sorry.
He said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump,
God.
I want to ask you about January 6, 2021.
Here we go.
After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected.
Nice
and then he
avoid.
comes
Nice
in,
dodge.
and we're now laughed at. We're like
Complete
a bunch
dodge
of
of the
stupid
question.
people. What
I would have
happened
liked to
the
see him
United
attack
States' reputation
the
under this
issue of
man's
January
leadership
6th. I would like to have seen
is
him attack
horrible,
that, and he's
including
avoiding it.
weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters
man.
who believe that you
He's like, "No, answer the
violated your
question."
constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy
All right, now he's
Pelosi,
answering it,
if
and
you
he's
just
being-
watched
that's
the
an honest
news
answer.
from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was.
What's the response to that? I want to see if Biden directly responds to this question about the National Guard. I'm very curious about that.
President Biden?
I want a response to that question.
He encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. But he went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court. And they said,
a lot of people have done that.
No, this guy
going
is responsible
and challenging and offering challenges in courts to an election result is not.
And these people should be in jail.
The same as an insurrection.
And they should
but
be
this is interesting.
Being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities.
This is the turnabout of fair play argument.
What they've done there, with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that. They saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing. The Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they
this is boring as hell, honestly.
And deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted.
I'm calling my own live stream boring. This is terrible.
They should go to
but
jail for
the
that.
decorum is
If
better
a
than I
Republican
expected.
did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man on.
You knew I was coming.
And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true.
You're a felon.
The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in
I think the argument
Capitol
that
Hill.
he offered to
those
send
people,
troops
every one of those was convicted
in advance
turned over desks.
I don't know.
Turned them over statues.
I'd like to see that. I
idea
haven't heard that
those
argument
people
before.
are
Maybe
patriots?
I'm in the dark on
Come
this
on.
one.
When I asked him the first two debates we had, first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly
you'd
what
be
it
in
means
jail.
about you
One of his
feeling you
best
have every
lines
right to
ever.
go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times.
I don't like the attack
Should have
on
been
the son.
convicted before, but his Justice
Talk about
Department
Biden.
let the statute
Keep
of
it on
limitations
stage.
lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise,
And
you're
there's
not
the
getting
thing.
$1 billion. If I ever
That's
said
well,
that,
let's see. That should
that's
see the
quid
inside of a
pro
courtroom.
quo.
That's my issue.
We're not going to do
That's
anything.
that's the right spot
We're
to
not
hit
going to
him.
give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do
That's
with
a
the
real
son.
thing Biden
This
actually
man
bragged
is a
about.
criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong
The idea.
relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't
That's
have
right, that's
sex
pretty
with
good.
a porn star, number one.
pretty good. Sorry,
number
that's pretty
two,
funny.
that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to
He's
be
not
appealed
lying
and
there.
won.
Sorry.
We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it.
Here's an interesting thing. Trump's political career was probably dead after January 6th until they started prosecuting him.
I don't think
That's a
any
fact.
campaign has ever taken hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know
tough
about what he's
question. I like
done,
that.
Yes. The more they
Yikes.
know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases on
And the Democrats have no problem saying if you vote for this guy, you're a bad person.
face.
And
I don't
I
know
think
what the
that's going to
Jews
hurt them
will do,
too.
but
I think
do-
that
do know
soundbite's
he
going
has
to
a
hurt
real
them.
problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Do you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones," he said, "I think they're fine people on both sides."
Oh my God! Did he
What
go back to the fine
American
people
president
lie? He
would
went
ever
back to the
say
fine people lie.
Nazis coming out of fields
This
carrying
is a
torches,
hugely
singing
debunked thing.
The same anti-Semitic
Sorry,
bile,
look.
carrying swastikas.
I'm
We're
just going
fine
to throw this out there. Like the Trump said, there's fine people on both sides. Immediately, if you just go watch the clip, or you don't have to search for it. It's a clearly debunked thing. I'm really surprised that Biden went there because he's going to get beat up pretty hard on this one.
Has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it.
That
There's
might be a
nothing
little
to
extreme.
debate. He made.
Woodrow Wilson would like to enter the chat.
See, it's debunked all over the place. Every anchor has, every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came
That's
out
true.
where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used
He's
that
right
as an excuse
about that. And Biden using the fine people on both sides things is a flat. That's going to hurt him.
Was said at the time, and the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods.
He's leaning into the fine people on both sides things, and it's gonna. I feel like this is gonna hurt him a little bit.
We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers.
Leaning into January 6th is a better play for Biden here because I think a lot of independents do blame Trump for that.
They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
I don't know if I've got a winner or a loser on this one so far, but I think Biden leaning into the whole fine people on both sides accusation, I think that's going to hurt him a little bit. I think leaning into January 6th is a good thing. January 6th plays hard against Donald Trump at the end of the day. I think a lot of independents, people who aren't really in the know, will lay January 6th at his feet and talk about it being this issue where, you know, we tried to overturn an election and all that stuff. I think that plays hard against Donald Trump, but rolling into the Charlottesville thing and leaning hard into the accusation of the fine people on both sides, that's been such a clearly debunked bit of media. Not only that, but here's my thing with the fine people on both sides thing is that it pretty much it puts a pretty bright light on the fact that the media leans pretty hard. A lot of media carries water for the Democrats. If you're going to lean into the fine people on both sides argument and you're going to use that in a presidential debate, you're going to shine a pretty bright light on the fact that it's obvious that big portions of the media are carrying water for the Democrats. And that's not going to help Biden. If the Trump campaign can use that properly over the next couple of months, that bit of leaning into that conversation, I think is going to hurt Biden. Otherwise, I think that Biden's acquitted himself pretty well. There was a little bit of a fumble and kind of a runoff where it almost looks like he completely lost his train of thought early in the debate. But since then, I really feel like, I'll be honest, he's exceeded my expectations in regards to what I thought he was going to be able to put on tape tonight. So I will give him credit for that. I think he's done a nice job there in terms of that. But I just, man, I don't know. It's a good debate. Way more civil than I thought it was going to be. I did not expect this level of conversation to be taking place between these two guys. Not really a conversation, but that it's relatively civil. I think Trump's been relatively mild-mannered. He's still, I think his wanting to get the last word on these things, his constant desire to get the last word instead of moving on to the next question. When Biden hits him with something or accuses him of something, his inability to let that go almost makes him look more guilty. It almost gives more credence to what Biden's saying than if he would just dismiss it and move on. So that's a problem I have with kind of some of Trump's responses and his inability to move on from things. Overall, I think that both guys have acquitted themselves well. This is a much more respectful debate, light on substance from a policy perspective. Neither of these guys is actually talking about here's what I want to do and here's why it's going to work. But that's the modern debate format. We don't really dive into policy very deeply, and that's unfortunate because, and look, I've said this before, I'll say it again. The policies, these are two demand side two demand side politicians. So at the end of the day, these guys both want to throw tariffs on China. These guys both, neither of these guys is actually looking to fix immigration, while Trump may be better on the border depending on how you view it. At the end of the day, neither of these guys wants to fix the actual immigration process or the issues with immigration. So neither of them are going to talk about it. I do think that voters will believe Trump when he says we'll end the war in the Ukraine. I think a lot of people believe that if Trump was still president, there wouldn't be a war in the Ukraine right now. And I think a lot of voters think that if President Trump is reelected, that the war in the Ukraine will end. So I think that's a strong speaking point for him.
Families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die for pregnancy-related causes, and Black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there are more small Black businesses that have been...
I'll just tell them that they're wrong.
Number 2.
You don't vote for me, you're not Black.
Black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number 3, we're providing housing for Black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that
what's that now?
The impact on the choice that Black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation,
I'm so sick of this.
I was able to reduce Black child care costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs.
What about poor white people?
Because when you provide those child care protections, you increase economic growth because more people come in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest was forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation.
He didn't cause the inflation. Sorry, Trump, you're wrong on this one.
He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families. And
he's not helping it. He's not solving the problem, but the CARES Act caused a lot of inflation, too.
Anymore, they can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore.
Honestly, I thought this thing was going to 10, man. I'm tired.
A country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking Black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet. You're going to see something that's
Trump's sitting in a place that matters.
Thank you, President Biden.
That hurt.
There was no inflation.
I'm sorry. This hurt.
You know
Well, of course
why?
there wasn't. You took
Economy
over
was
after
flat
2020.
on its
Come
back.
on, man.
50% unemployment.
Hey, come on, man. I used a Biden term.
Decimated the economy. Absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no
See,
inflation.
this is what I have. This is my problem with Biden.
Jobs.
He takes COVID and the COVID stuff that happened and blames Trump, almost Trump solely on it, and then takes credit for the recovery after. That's pretty disingenuous.
I made sure that there are $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again.
Neither political party wants to solve the healthcare issue because the only real solution is free markets for healthcare, and neither of these guys are going to talk about that.
We put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis.
Oh, my God.
2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Talk nuclear and natural
Let me
gas.
just go back to what he said
Please
about
talk. Just talk about
police.
nuclear and natural gas,
How
please,
close
God.
the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name.
Oh, we
And
forgot.
he called it to him for 10, and they've
That was
taken
more of a
great
Hillary
steps
Clinton
to it.
thing,
Now
but,
they
you
see
know,
it
he did
happening.
write the 94 crime
But
bill.
when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job. Great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea.
Ooh, is that a
It's
wink and a
great idea.
nod
It's
to
one of
Tim
the
Scott
most
as
successful
VP?
Economic development acts ever in the country. Opportunity zones.
Should I
And
jump
the
on
biggest
Twitter?
beneficiary
I should
are
jump on
blacks,
Twitter
and
and bring
that's
that up real
why
quick. Let's see what's
we
going on
have the
Twitter.
best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage.
All right, guys, I got to share something with you here.
I don't know where they
Funniest thing I've seen on Twitter so far,
The idea
right here.
that anything he said is true.
What do you think?
I passed the most extensive climate change.
Sorry, I know this is serious
in
business,
history.
and I should be
find
serious
ourselves,
about it,
by the way,
but I'm sorry.
my
I just found that
colleges.
one funny.
I
Back to the
came
debate.
up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water.
Let me throw this
water,
out here. Just
didn't do the
stuff
damn
on
thing
Twitter.
for anybody.
Trump left office with the worst jobs record since the Great Depression. It's another example of them like using the COVID numbers. It's like, come on, man, that's disingenuous at best.
The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He must undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing.
Sorry, I'm
It was
happy
a
we got out of the
rip-off
Paris
United
Accords.
States.
I'm sorry. I'm glad we got out of
hated it
TPP. Those are
because
things
I
I
didn't
like.
wanna waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything? We're not able to, the United States can't get its under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. by 2035 we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way,
I don't think he is. And I think you should own it.
Prescription drugs, one company agreed
Here's one.
that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one voluntarily. I made
Yikes.
sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay. And
Quick
by the
Twitter hit here on we should
So every
absolutely.
day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
Yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm been proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee.
Let's just keep in mind that what he's saying is they should be paying money into the Social Security system that won't count towards their Social Security benefits, and that's what is considered fair share.
One enough.
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent, but the biggest thing will do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare, both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports, is in fact want to cut it as well.
It needs to be cut. Folks, it's bankrupting the
protect our
country.
seniors.
You can't tax
It's
your way out of it.
ridiculous.
I would really like Donald Trump to stand firm on this and be honest, but he won't.
The ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is, we're in a situation where I talk about education for black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants by another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face. About so many other things, too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid.
You can't have a welfare state and open borders at the same time. You can't do it. It's not sustainable. It's an absolute fact.
Our veterans are
He's
living
right
in
on
the
this
street,
one.
and these people are living in luxury hotels.
I'm not
He doesn't know
a
what he's
tough on
doing,
immigration
and
guy.
It's really coming back. I've
But
never
you can't
seen
put
such anger
people who don't
in
pay
our
into the
country
system
before.
President
or
Biden.
haven't paid into the system
The
onto
idea
the
that
public
veterans are
dole.
not
You just
being
can't do it.
taken care of. I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he said,
Here we
he
go.
acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increase and go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
Who
President Biden,
cares
thank you
about
so much.
people?
Let's turn to the cost
Woodrow
of
Wilson.
child care, which many American families struggle to
I don't care about
afford.
child
President
care.
Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care...
Child care is purely an inflationary issue. Fix inflation. Make it so that people can afford homes. Make it so people can live on one income. Because the best possible outcome for a married couple with children is for somebody to be able to stay home and raise the children instead of turning them over to the state. So you got to fix inflation. That's the issue. Child care is just an offset. It's just child care is just a symptom of poor fiscal management and bad monetary policy.
He doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fired. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America.
Sounds like so I'm having some people say in the comment section on the Facebook feed that they can't hear the debate. But I'm also seeing people responding to things that they're saying.
No one.
So I'm not 100% sure which.
Number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking.
Sure.
Look it up. Go online. Number two, 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history, best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden.
Facilities.
President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you, and they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
He keeps saying that.
President Biden?
Look,
that's a bad claim. I think
the
worst president in the history, he's not great, but
he will
he's going to have problems.
The taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming in the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that we're importing. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden.
You lost
Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China.
Manchurian
candidate. He's afraid to do
I love Trump so much. I swear to God. I just want his career to.
Because we bring in so
I'm
much
not on
money
Truth
with
Social,
the
whatever
tariffs
I
that I
be. He kills
imposed
me.
on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Here's the question,
we were doing
dude.
very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years
love it when they call
like
it the
nobody's
COVID.
ever had before, any country,
One
in
of my
every way.
favorites.
And then we had to get tough, and it was the drugs pouring across the border were
The border issues part of
started
it,
to
for
increase.
sure.
We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen. The way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very
Beautiful
low numbers,
dogs.
very low numbers.
Look up Shane Gillis.
Then he came along. The numbers. Have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low because the gotaways. They don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across
anything
our border
you can relate
now
back to
is
the border,
the
'cause
largest
he's strong
we've
on
ever
that
had
issue.
by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together.
I'm sorry,
It's a
Biden's eyes
bipartisan
look
deal.
like he's stoned.
More
I'm
fentanyl
sorry.
machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues, said, "Don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically." No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together.
Okay.
That's what we have to do. We need-
Fix immigration.
Thank you, President Biden.
So you're not
President Trump,
incentivizing
and again,
illegal
the question is-
immigration, and then you can actually catch criminals coming across the border. It's having thousands of people are incentivized by our bad immigration policy to come across the border. Furthermore, let's drop our sanctions against Venezuela so that their economy isn't in complete chaos. Let's allow economic development in Mexico instead of being afraid of it, so that there are jobs for people in Mexico. And then all of a sudden, our border's not so goddamn unsecure. and we can actually keep an eye on it, and the people who are coming across, we can be much more assured that the people we're catching are actually up to nefarious activities. You got to fix immigration. God dang it.
For the reporter, I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago. But Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86
Mental
at
capacity.
the end of your second
This
term.
will be fun.
How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career
Look into my eyes.
being criticized as being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United
That's
States
a long
Senate,
time ago, bro.
and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment.
I'm so tired of them standing on COVID numbers.
Private investment
Jock policy.
and enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people. Well, the whole idea of computer chips. We used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States, and guess what? Those fabs they call to build these chips. Those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't.
I'm just going to throw this out there real quick. If you Better Union did a story on this. I saw it on YouTube. And the amount of corporate, for Democrats who are the anti-corporate subsidy group, if you look at the amount of subsidies that our government's paying to move chip manufacturing back to the United States, it's if you don't like corporate subsidies, corporate handouts, but corporate welfare, I got bad news for you on the whole chip manufacturing come back to the United States. If you think it's okay, that's fine, but I'm just saying.
All our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you.
I'm
Former
sorry,
President
Biden's
Trump,
eyes
to
make me think
follow
he
up,
sounds
you
something.
would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know.
How do you
We
ace
made
a
it public.
cognitive
He
test?
took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical
I'm sorry, I love
exams
Trump
every
so
year.
much.
And, you know,
Not
we
as, I
knock
don't want
on
to be
wood
the
wherever
president,
we
but
may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in
Trump's
going to
get roasted on the golf thing
25,
here.
30
He's
years.
going to get
Actually,
roasted
I'm probably
on that.
a
And I
little
look
bit
forward to
lighter,
it.
but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced him. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they'd never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you.
know,
President Biden?
You can see he is
And the
6'5",
most fit. There's
and
never
only
been anybody as
225
fit.
Pounds, or 20, 35 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. That he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was at 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Oh my
I had-
God!
how many-
The golf
see how
thing.
this way
I
goes.
want the golf thing
Yeah,
all
that's
over.
the-
The golf thing is going to be all over
President Trump,
social media.
we're going
I'm
to-
here
let's
for
not
it. I'm going to
act
be
like
excited about it.
You
to
are
a
a child.
specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges
Here we
have
go.
been exhausted,
Will you accept
that
the
you will
results of the
accept
election?
the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now.
We have to
I'd
wax
be
philosophic.
at one of my many
That's fun.
places, enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into...
He's kind of right on foreign policy. Sorry, you anti-Trumpers out there.
You can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III,
That's
and he's
a very
driving
accurate
us
thing.
there.
And I would
Kim
just add to
Jong-un-
this that going back to the Syria conflict under Obama, the Democrats have been gunning for Russia for a long time. I'm old enough to remember all of this stuff. I was in the Persian Gulf in '98, and I'm telling you, the Democrats have been after Russia and Iran for a long time, and I don't understand why.
Let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want.
Those freaking eyes are
This is
killing me,
Article
man.
5. An attack on one is attack on
Look
all.
at 'em.
And required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have...
Again, I'm not a fan of this fear-mongering that Putin's going to go rolling into Poland. I generally don't believe Putin wants a broad European war. I don't think he wants direct conflict with the United States. I really don't think he wants that. I think that's a little bit of fear-mongering that I think is unjustified.
A lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him.
Trump's not lying there. Sorry, Trump's not lying there.
From me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me.
I think it's hard as an American to look at this particular issue and go, look, no new conflicts under Trump, man. That's a
with
hard...
Ukraine and Russia. Because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else in a nice location.
There's going to be a day.
And again,
There's
no
going to be a day.
indictments, No political
when
opponent stuff.
Trump
because
is not part of our political. After this election, if he doesn't win, Trump's, based on his age, but man, I'm gonna miss him.
Let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate, live from Georgia.
Okay, kids, this has been a blast. It actually has not been as entertaining as I was hoping it was gonna be. I don't know. What do you expect from two 80-somethings? The entertainment value is low. I've been here for an hour and a half. This is boring as hell. I don't know. Can't pick a winner. I'll do a live tomorrow. Just me. Come and join me. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. Come and join me. We'll have a conversation. We'll break this thing down. I'll rewatch it to my own disdain. I will rewatch this thing. We'll have a conversation, and maybe we can actually talk some policy. I've also got some stuff talked about that's South Carolina specific, and it'll be a much better. I'll tell you, makes me feel good about myself. It'll be a much better program without having to listening to. Yeah, absolutely. Tonight's debate brought to you by AARP, says Brian Stewart. It'll actually absolutely be a better show tomorrow when we don't have to listen to Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So, hey, I want to thank everybody who stopped by. And this is Brian for Liberty, and we'll catch you guys next time.